the world. Please.
Let's change the world, yeah. Let's change the world.
Hey, Spokane, welcome back to the Milestones Squadcast. My name is Sean. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm joined by Phillip Tyler. Hey, man. I do want to thank this man because you helped me get started, right?
Yes,
and
sir.
I didn't think I could do this.
Yes, sir.
You and Jen Thomas. So I've been wanting to say that to you.
Man, respect.
That was, 6 months ago?
Yeah, or more.
More, yeah, actually more. So thank you. We also got Chief Meidl here from the Spokane Police Department, Sheriff Ozzie, and Latrice Williams. We're going to be talking about the rise of gang violence in our communities, kids killing kids, and why is nobody talking about it. So we already kind of got into it just a few minutes ago. I had to kind of stop us. But you were saying that Latrice had kind of reached out and started trying to
Yeah.
She had a conversation.
Yeah,
back in
yeah.
January, right?
Yeah, it was about January, and what's interesting about that is the sheriff and the chief have been talking about this since back in 2015, right? And many times since then. But it was in January when Latrice reached out to me and was questioning why isn't our loudest voices in the community, our community partners, our elected officials, not talking about young black men dying in the streets of Spokane when they are yelling and marching and protesting for brothers losing their lives in other cities. And if black lives truly matter in all spaces, as I interpreted her email, why aren't they mattering in Spokane? And I'm not going to speak anymore on it because Latrice is right here.
Right
and
here,
she can talk to that.
Well, thanks for having me. What it stemmed from is that, because I'm out in the community all the time, and I'm a realtor, and I'm always kind of just in the community.
Right.
And watching the news, and seeing just like sometimes, okay, this is an accident, but now there's like 5, 6, 7. And so I was on Facebook, which is my platform, and I was like crying out basically through words, like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And literally crying as I'm writing it, and I didn't really expect an answer. I just wanted to just share what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And just like he said, I feel like at the time we had a lot going on with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and all the bigger names that have been affected nationally, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm seeing this in my own hometown. So I'm like, wait a minute. So to go even further, I'm from East Central, and so a lot of it was happening in East Central.
So
I grew up walking down the streets, going to Horseman's, going to the East Central Community Center, and a lot of that was literally right there on the corner of 5th and Fisk, which is where Horseman's is, or was something else now. But so that it drew my heart, and I don't want to take up too much time, but so that's kind of what draws us here today. And we want answers. I want to be able to speak to those people who may think, and I'm going to speak on the female side, but you may think that, the way somebody is leading you is the right way.
Yes, say that.
I just want to make sure that people know that loyalty goes both ways. It's got to be reciprocated. That means if I give you something, you give it back to me.
Right.
And it's got to be in the right way, and it's got to be in a positive fashion. Not, make sure that you know what you're being loyal to. And like I said before we got on camera, is that a lot of people we all grew up needing or building that family relationship, right? And some people have broken homes, so some people you are gonna find a family outside of a family because that's just the way God created us.
That's
right?
Exactly the way
He
God
created us like that. So I don't think it's good to say that we're gonna take this completely away from people, but let's educate people on what are you actually following, who are you being loyal to, and what is it what are you doing?
What's the real outcome of it, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's why it's important, like, you bring that perspective of a young female, and then I'm on the other end of the perspective of a young male, and like, I know what they're thinking, I know what their mindset is, and being 41 years old, I still battle with that, having to like, whoa, stop.
Right.
Because it's easy to just go back to that self-centered mentality, and I'm gonna get it all, I'm gonna get mine, like. and it's a struggle. So that's why, like, when I speak to these boys, I tell them, first off, if you play with your life, you're going to pay with your life. And if you wait till you're in your late 30s, it's almost impossible. It's so hard. Like, even now, I almost every day got to remind myself, like, you're not that same dude. Like, you can't do this or you can't do that. You can't even think like that because of what it also leads to in my actions and reactions.
That what you make a good point is that you waited to the late 30s. What we're seeing now, and the chief of sheriff can speak to this, is they're in their teens, early teens.
That was when
that
I
are
started.
pulling the trigger and taking lives
Right.
and these kind of things. And I'm gonna go real quick. You said self-centered. We are here as what we call the coalition of the willing, right?
Right.
Because this is not about self-promotion. This is about preservation of lives. And what we are doing and what we're going to be doing, you're going to be seeing this coming up soon, is challenging these community groups, these elected officials,
these
our
churches,
neighbors,
these
these churches, these
pastors.
pastors. Why aren't you being that moral voice? Why aren't you, as Latrice said, helping to educate our neighbors about the impact of gang violence on the community, on the family? We can talk about social determinants of crime and these kind of things, poverty, lack of education, family, income inequality and all that. But the roots of it are the family. And this violence, this gang violence, this behavior, we're talking about behavior, not talking about beings. We're talking about gang activity, is destroying the family, which is the root of our community. And nobody's talking about it.
Right. And so you mentioned about the chief and the sheriff talking about this, 2015 you said?
Longer than that.
Actually, I can't remember a time when the gang and gang violence hasn't been a topic in Spokane. When I first came here, 1996, this community was still in denial. One of your former chiefs, Terry Magnan, was chastised for even using the word gang. This Spokane, it doesn't exist, can't exist here. Well, it does exist here. It has always existed here, and one of the worst parts of it is, in 2013, the youth of this community reached out to their pastors and said, "Help us."
Are you serious?
Help
I got
us.
goosebumps, man.
We are tired of watching our friends, our family members, and we're afraid of dying. Now, what did we do? Collectively, what did we do?
You marched.
We do what we always do. We put on a march from Liberty to Mission Parks. We stood up on our soapboxes. We said words, and we missed one of the key opportunities to save these young people because they wanted to be saved at that point.
That was 2013?
2013. Those same kids that are doing the violence now were at those marches. And they were just little at that point.
Wow.
And I remember...
If they're still around.
I remember playing with them, because I know some of these kids, and talking with them, and now they're the ones dying. And, the chief and I in March of this year stepped out in front of the cameras and went, "Help." At that point, we had had more drive-by shootings in the first quarter than we'd ever seen. And that's the ones we knew of, because many of these things are not being reported to us.
Right.
And we had 4 dead kids at that point. We have 6 dead kids now. And I was amazed that, as you stated, lack of outcry, lack of we need to do something from the community. But what the chief and I got was backlash. We were called racist, white supremacist, we're just too law and order. And I was like, wait a minute, we're talking about young people dying.
Right.
These are kids.
Right.
These are somebody's babies. These are somebody's brothers, sisters.
Right.
What are we and you're sitting there talking about racism. You're talking about white supremacy.
Why aren't you talking about the killings?
Exactly. And
That part.
truly,
Yeah.
if we truly mean that all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, where is everybody? And I'm really disappointed in many of our community leaders because they went dead silence. You have not heard from them. Nothing at all from, especially the loudest voices. But it's counter to the narrative they want to push. That's just my perspective.
Yeah, it's like this unspoken tragedy nobody wants to speak about, and we see it growing and growing and growing, and we're trying to find ways of how do we stop our youth from killing each other. And it finally reached a head. We had 5 or 6 youth dead. And
Right.
Talking to my major even this morning, he confirmed that the gangs that we are dealing with, there's no common theme or common enterprise or anything along those lines. They're doing it, in essence, he's saying, for recreation. So there's a gap or a hole in their life somewhere that this for them is almost like a recreation. That may be oversimplifying it. But
What did he say? There's no what?
there's no common theme to it. They're not doing it because
Yeah.
they're wanting to engage in just this type of activity or that. It's almost like a recreation, which is an oversimplification for
yeah.
sure. But the sheriff and I were trying to stop the shootings, and unfortunately, by the time we get involved, we usually stop those through arrests. Uncooperative victims, uncooperative family members, nobody would talk to us. And so our effort in March was we need the community's help. We have to have the community's help because we're hitting a wall. Yeah. And so when we came out in March and said, please help us stop these killings, the backlash to me was actually surprising because there didn't seem to be any traction anywhere in this community about the number of deaths through drive-bys that were gang-related and proven to be gang-related. So that brings us to where Phillip comes in, Latrice comes in, and a lot of the coalition of the willing is like we had the community say, we're going to help you. And we know that we may not be popular in some circles, but we're going to do it because we need to stop the killings.
Right, right.
And one of the things that, after that experience, I went, okay, these people have gone dead silence on us. Who do I reach out to anymore? I reached out to Phil. I called Phil and said, Phil, we got dead kids. We got kids dying.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? And he said, I have an idea. I've been talking to members of the community. And I said, fine, let's pull everybody together. And we've been talking and putting things together for the last 3 months. We're about ready to announce a major effort.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
we're going to work towards saving our youth and providing an opportunity to break that cycle.
Yeah. Let me say this, because I know the sheriff, as you're a politician, and the chief, an appointed chief, both white men, are maybe a little have a little angst about saying it. Latrice and I will. When you say these young kids that have been dying, up until the young white male that was shot out in the valley, it's been young black men.
5 to 6.
We need to say that.
Yeah.
Right.
5
We
to
need to
6.
say that. And these young black men's lives have been taken at the hands of other young black men and a young black woman in one of the cases. You can't be afraid to say that.
Right, right,
We can't be afraid to talk about it.
right, right. Not in
Because
this
if
day
we
and
don't,
age.
like Teresa said earlier, you get young sisters that are driven down a wrong path. And by the grace of God, this woman right here has pulled
She
out of it
went
and
there.
as an example
Right.
to tell you all that nonsense that you may be hearing
Right.
is not going to do anything for you.
Wow, that's good right
Right?
there.
And if we remain silent, if we remain silent, it's going to be more lives lost, and let's say more young black lives. Now we're seeing white lives affected too, right? And gang violence begets drug violence, begets property violence, begets this.
Human
this should
trafficking, domestic violence,
So this is
all
an
these
issue
things.
for every citizen,
Of
every
the community,
community,
right.
every church to be a part of. And we are blessed to have, you talked with his father in 2013. We're blessed to have Pastor James Watkins coming into this coalition. And that's going to be that voice that's going to help us push this narrative even further,
Right.
deeper into the community in his connection. So it's important to say, though, it's been young black men dying.
Yes. So we're going to end on that for part 1. And we're going to take a break and come back for part 2. So just keep tuning in. Thank you. There's a lot to discuss, a lot of realities we need to really come to grips with, and stop turning a blind eye. I'm going to touch more a little bit about that in the next segment. So thank you for tuning in. Sam, you got us?